The boy was sitting on the curb outside the Iron Horse Tavern at 9:15 on a Friday night in October, crying so quietly that nobody walking past would have noticed unless they were looking. He was small, maybe 7 years old. He was wearing jeans that were too short for his legs and a thin grey t-shirt that was not warm enough for the cold autumn evening. His sneakers were beat up. The right one had a hole forming at the toe where his big toe was pressing through. He had brown hair that needed cutting and brown eyes that were red from the crying. He was sitting with his arms wrapped around his knees, his small body folded into itself, his face turned down toward the sidewalk, so that his hair fell forward and partially hid his eyes from anyone who might walk past. The bar behind him was loud. Friday night at the Iron Horse Tavern was always loud. The bar had been the meeting point for the Black Eagles Motorcycle Club for the last 12 years, a small independent club of mostly veterans, mostly Vietnam-era men in their 60s and 70s, plus a few younger members who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Iron Horse was their unofficial clubhouse, even though they did not own it. The owner, a former Marine named Jerry Holcomb, gave them the back room every Friday night and a discount on beer and a tolerance for the deep rumble of motorcycle engines starting and stopping in his parking lot from sundown until last call. The Black Eagles were not a one-percenter club. They were not outlaws. They were what the motorcycle community called a riding club. Men and women who shared a love of motorcycles and a history of military service and the particular bond that develops between people who have seen things together that civilians do not see. They did charity rides. They escorted military funerals. They raised money for veterans' suicide prevention. They were, at their core, a brotherhood of veterans on motorcycles, doing what they could to help each other and their community. There were 80 of them at the Iron Horse that night. Friday night was the regular meeting night, and most of the active members showed up. The parking lot was full of motorcycles, Harleys mostly, though there were a few Triumphs and Hondas and one beautiful old Indian that belonged to the chapter president. The bar was full of bikers, leather vests with patches, grey and white beards, tattoos that had faded over decades on arms that were still strong despite age, the smell of leather and motor oil and beer, and the particular sweetness of frying food from the kitchen. Inside the bar, at a table near the front window, sat a man named Ray Tilden. Ray was 68 years old. He was a retired iron worker. He had served in Vietnam from 1968 to 1970, 2 tours in the same artillery battalion as Big Tom McKenna would later serve in different Marine outfits in different parts of the country. Ray had not known Tom McKenna. They had never met, but Ray was the kind of man Tom would have recognized immediately. The kind of veteran who had come home from Vietnam quieter than he had left, who had spent the next 50 years processing what he had seen by riding motorcycles on long highways and not talking about it much, and being available to other veterans when they needed someone to be available. Ray had been the chapter president of the Black Eagles for the last 6 years. He was a big man, 6'1", broad in the shoulders, with a long grey beard that came down to the middle of his chest, and steel-rimmed glasses that he had been wearing for 30 years. His leather vest had patches all over it. The Black Eagles patch on the back, a Vietnam veteran patch, an artillery patch, a POWMIA patch, a few smaller patches for various rides he had attended over the years. He sat at his usual table near the front window with 3 other senior members.
Big Frank Costas, the vice president, 66 years old, also a Vietnam vet. Donnie Reeves, the secretary, 64, an Army veteran from the Gulf War era. And Sammy Briggs, the road captain, 58, the youngest of the senior officers, an Iraq War veteran who had ridden with the club for the past 9 years. The four men were drinking beer and going through the agenda for the chapter meeting that would happen in the back room at 10 o'clock. Ray had a printed copy of the agenda in front of him and was making notes with a pen. The bar around them was loud. Country music.
On the jukebox, voices, the occasional burst of laughter from a table of younger members in the corner. But Ray and the senior officers had developed, over years of these Friday nights, the ability to focus on their work despite the noise. Ray looked up from his agenda. He was checking his watch. As he glanced toward the front window, he saw the boy. The boy was directly across the street from the bar, about 50 feet away, sitting on the curb, alone. Ray froze. He looked at the boy for several seconds. He looked at the street. He looked at the parked cars and the few pedestrians walking past. Nobody else was paying attention to the boy. Nobody was with the boy. The boy was simply sitting on a curb, alone, on a Friday night in October, in a part of town that was not particularly safe for a child to be alone after dark. "Frank," Ray said, quietly, not interrupting, just enough to get Big Frank's attention. "Yeah? Look across the street. Tell me what you see." Big Frank turned in his chair. He looked through the front window. He saw the boy. He looked at Ray. "What the hell is a kid doing out there?" "That's what I'm asking myself." Donnie and Sammy turned to look. They saw the boy. The four men sat at their table and looked at the small figure on the curb across the street. The boy had not moved. He was still folded into himself, his arms around his knees, his face turned down. "He alone?" Sammy asked. "Looks like it," Ray said. "How long has he been there?" "I don't know. I just looked up and saw him." Ray watched the boy for another minute. Nobody approached the boy. Nobody called out to him. Nobody appeared to be watching him from a parked car or a doorway. The boy was alone. Truly alone. On a curb across the street from a biker bar at 9:15 on a Friday night in October. Ray stood up. "Where you going, Ray?" Big Frank asked. "I'm going to talk to him." "Want me to come?" Ray thought about it. He looked at himself. He was a big man with a long grey beard and a leather vest covered in patches and steel-rimmed glasses. He looked to a small child who did not know him, like he might be intimidating. He looked like he might frighten the boy further. He looked, frankly, like a stranger that any responsible parent would teach their child to avoid. "No," Ray said. "Let me go alone first. Don't want to scare him with all of us. But watch the door. If something happens, come out fast." "Got it." Ray walked through the bar. A few of the other Black Eagles nodded at him as he passed. He nodded back. He pushed open the front door. The cold October air hit him. He stepped out onto the sidewalk in front of the Iron Horse. He walked across the street, slowly, not approaching the boy directly, but angling toward him the way a person approaches a frightened animal, without rushing, without sudden movements, giving the animal time to see them coming and decide whether to stay or run. The boy heard Ray's boots on the pavement. He looked up. His face was small and pale in the dim light of the street lamp above. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. He saw Ray. He saw the leather vest and the long grey beard and the patches and the steel-rimmed glasses. His eyes widened. He started to stand up, the way a frightened animal
starts to flee. "Hey," Ray said. He stopped about 10 feet from the boy. He held up his hands, palms out, the universal gesture of non-threat. "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to run. I'm not going to hurt you. Okay?" The boy was half standing. He was looking at Ray. He was deciding. Ray did something then that he had learned decades earlier, when his own children had been small and frightened of things, when his daughter had been scared of thunderstorms and his son had been scared of the basement. He sat down on the curb. He sat down about 8 feet from the boy. He put himself at the boy's eye level. He made himself smaller, less imposing, less threatening. He sat on the cold curb in his jeans and his leather vest, and he looked at the boy with the calm face he reserved for frightened things. "My name is Ray," he said. "I'm sitting in that bar across the street, the Iron Horse. I saw you sitting out here by yourself. It's cold tonight. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. That's all. You don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. But I'm going to sit here for a little bit and make sure you're okay. Is that all right?" The boy was still standing. His hands were balled into small fists at his sides. He was looking at Ray. He was thinking. "Are you a bad guy?" the boy asked. His voice was small. "No, son. I'm not a bad guy." "You look like a bad guy." Ray almost smiled. He stopped himself. The boy was serious. The boy had been taught, probably by a mother or a grandmother, that men who looked like Ray were dangerous. The boy was using a useful framework. The framework was wrong in this particular case, but the framework was useful in general, and Ray was not going to mock it. "I know I look kind of scary," Ray said. "I have a long beard and a lot of patches on my vest, but I'm a grandfather. I have grandchildren. About your age, actually. I'm just a regular old man who rides motorcycles. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to make sure you're okay." The boy was still standing, but he was not running. The decision was happening. Ray waited. "Why are you crying?" Ray asked. Gently. The boy's face crumpled. He started crying again. He sat back down on the curb. He pulled his knees up to his chest. He started to cry in the small, private way that children cry when they think no one is watching, but a stranger is watching, and the stranger is being kind, and the kindness is making the crying worse instead of better. Ray stayed where he was. He did not move closer. He just sat on the curb 8 feet away and let the boy cry. After about a minute, the boy looked up. His face was wet. His nose was running. He wiped it with the back of his hand. "My mom," the boy said. "My mom is—" He could not finish the sentence. He started crying again. Ray waited. He had been a father. He had been a grandfather. He had spent thousands of hours of his life waiting for small people to find the words for things that were too big to say. After another minute, the boy tried again. "My mom is sick," he said. She takes pills. And the man who lives with us, he yelled at her tonight. He yelled really loud, and she fell down, and she didn't get up. And the man told me to get out of the house and not come back until he came to get me. So I came down here, because we live up there." He pointed up the street. "And I didn't know where else to go. And I'm cold, and I'm hungry, and I want my mom." He started crying again. Hard this time, sobbing. The kind of crying that a child does when the dam finally breaks, and everything they have been holding inside comes out at once. Ray sat on the curb in his leather vest with his beard and his patches and his steel-rimmed glasses on, and he listened to a 7-year-old boy cry about his sick mother and the man who lived with them, and the cold October night,
and the inability of a small child to do anything about any of it. Ray took out his phone. He sent a text message to Big Frank. The message was short. The message said, "Need you out here, all of you. Bring the others, quietly." He put the phone back in his pocket. He looked at the boy. "What's your name?" Ray asked. "Tyler." "Tyler, I'm going to help you. I promise. My friends are going to come out and we're going to figure this out together. Is that all right?" The boy looked up. He looked across the street at the Iron Horse Tavern. He saw, through the front window, men standing up from their tables, men in leather vests, men with grey beards, men with patches. The men were starting to move toward the door of the bar. "Are those your friends?" Tyler asked. "They are." "How many?" Ray did not answer immediately. He looked at the bar. He looked at the men coming out the door. He looked at the boy. "How many friends do you have?" Tyler asked again. Ray thought about it. The Black Eagles chapter. 80 members. All of them at the bar tonight. All of them, by now, hearing what was happening from Big Frank. All of them coming out. "A lot of friends," Ray said. "I have a lot of friends." Tyler turned to look. The door of the Iron Horse Tavern opened, and then opened again, and then opened a third time. Bikers were coming out, 2 at a time, 3 at a time. Big bearded men in leather vests, walking slowly across the parking lot, walking slowly across the street, gathering in a loose semicircle around Ray and the boy on the curb. 10 bikers, 20, 40, 60. By the time the last members of the Black Eagles had made it out of the bar, all 80 of them were standing on the street in the cold October night, in a wide semicircle around Ray and the small crying boy named Tyler. Tyler looked at the bikers. He had stopped crying. His mouth was slightly open. His eyes were wide. He was a 7-year-old boy who had walked away from a house where his mother was unconscious and a man was yelling, and he had sat down on a curb across the street from a bar, and now 80 bikers were standing in a semicircle around him, looking at him with the calm, patient faces of men who had decided that whatever was wrong was going to be made right. "Tyler," Ray said, "these are my friends. Do you want to tell them what you told me?" Tyler looked at the bikers. He looked at Ray. He looked at the bikers again. He nodded slowly. The Black Eagles, all 80 of them, sat down on the cold pavement, on the curb, on the street, on the sidewalk. 80 bikers in leather vests with long grey beards and patches sat down so that they would be at eye level with a 7-year-old boy named Tyler, who had a sick mother and a frightening man and nowhere else to go. Tyler took a breath. He started talking. Tyler talked for almost an hour. The Black Eagles listened. 80 bikers in leather vests sitting on a cold sidewalk in October in front of a tavern called the Iron Horse, listening to a 7-year-old boy tell them, in fragments and in tears, and in the particular stop-and-start way that children speak when they are trying to explain something complicated, the story of his life. Ray pulled out a small notepad and a pen. He wrote down the important details as Tyler talked. The notepad was the kind he used at chapter meetings, small, lined, the cover scuffed from being in his vest pocket for years. Big Frank crouched beside Ray. Donnie and Sammy crouched on the other side. The senior officers of the Black Eagles became, in that hour on the cold sidewalk, the unofficial intake team for a child welfare case that they had not been trained for and were not authorized to handle, but that they were going to handle anyway, because nobody else was there to do it. Tyler's mother's name was Linda Mitchell. She was 34 years old. She had been a hairdresser before she got hurt. She had hurt her back about 2 years ago, falling down the stairs in their old apartment, and the doctor had given her pills for the pain. The pills had helped at first. Then the pills had stopped helping. Then the doctor had stopped giving her the pills, but Tyler said his mother had found a way to get more pills from somewhere. Tyler did not know where. The man who lived with them was named Wade. Tyler did not know Wade's last name. Wade had been living with them for about 8 months. Wade was not Tyler's father. Tyler did not know who his father was. His mother had told him that his father had left when Tyler was a baby, and that was all the information Tyler had ever been given. Wade had been nice at first, Tyler said. He had bought Tyler a video game when he first moved in. He had taken Linda and Tyler to a restaurant for Linda's birthday. He had been, for the first month or two, the kind of man Tyler had hoped his mother would find. Then Wade had changed. The pills, Tyler said. Wade had started bringing different pills home, pills that Linda had not been taking before. Wade gave them to Linda. Linda took them. Linda started sleeping more. Linda started talking less. Linda had stopped going to her job at the salon. Wade had told her she did not need to work, that he would take care of everything. But Wade did not actually take care of anything. The bills had started piling up. Tyler had seen them on the kitchen counter. Red ones, yellow ones, letters with the word "Final Notice" in big block letters. Wade got angry when the bills came. Wade got angry a lot. Wade yelled. Wade had started yelling at Linda about the bills, even though Linda was not the one who had agreed to take care of them. Wade had started yelling at Tyler too, about small things, about leaving toys on the floor, about talking too loud, about being in the kitchen when Wade was there. Tonight, Tyler said, had been worse than usual. Tyler had come home from school. Linda had been in the bedroom. Linda had been asleep. Tyler had tried to wake her up because he was hungry, and she had said this morning that she would make him a quesadilla for dinner. Linda had not woken up. Tyler had shaken her shoulder. He had said her name. He had even, Tyler said this part with a particular shame, he had even pulled on her arm a little. But Linda had not woken up. She had been breathing. Tyler had checked. She had been breathing. But she would not wake up. Wade had come home at about 7 o'clock. Wade had been drinking. Wade had been mad about something. Tyler did not know what, even before he came in the front door. Wade had walked into the bedroom and seen Linda asleep. Wade had yelled at her. Wade had pulled her shoulder hard. Linda had moaned but had not woken up. Wade had yelled some more. Wade had grabbed Linda by the front of her shirt and pulled her up to a sitting position. He had been yelling about money, about the rent, about how she was useless and couldn't even take care of her own kid. That was the word Wade had used about Tyler. Her kid. As if Tyler was an inconvenience. As if Tyler was a bag of garbage someone had left on the porch. Linda had finally responded. She had opened her eyes a little. She had tried to push Wade away. Wade had pushed back. Linda had fallen off the bed onto the floor. Tyler had been standing in the doorway, watching. Tyler had been screaming for Wade to stop. Wade had turned on Tyler then. Wade had walked toward Tyler. Tyler had backed up. Wade had told Tyler that he was sick of Tyler. Sick of his crying. Sick of his face. Sick of being responsible for a kid who was not his own. Wade had told Tyler to get out of the house, to go away. to not come back until Wade came looking for him. And Wade had said something else. Tyler said this part very quietly, looking at the sidewalk while he said it. Wade had said that if Tyler told anyone about what was happening at home, Wade was going to do something to Linda. Tyler did not know exactly what Wade had meant, but Tyler had understood enough. He had understood that telling people would make things worse for his mother. So Tyler had left the house. He had walked out the front door with no jacket and no money and no plan. He had walked down the street. He had passed the Iron Horse Tavern. He had heard the noise from the bar, the music and the voices and the rumble of motorcycles in the parking lot. He had walked another block. Then he had stopped. He had not known where he was going. He had not known what to do. He had been cold. He had been scared. He had been hungry. Because his mother had not made the quesadilla and he had not eaten dinner, he had sat down on a curb and had started to cry. Eventually, he had walked back toward the bar. He did not know why. Maybe because the bar was the only place on the street with people in it. Maybe because the noise from the bar was a kind of company, even if it was not the kind a 7-year-old boy could actually access. Tyler had sat down on the curb across from the Iron Horse and had cried. And he had been crying there for about 45 minutes when Ray had looked up from his agenda and seen him through the front window. That was Tyler's story. When Tyler finished talking, the 80 bikers sitting on the cold sidewalk did not say anything for a while. They just sat. They looked at the boy. They looked at each other. They looked at the ground. They were processing. Ray closed his notepad. He put it back in his vest pocket. "Tyler," Ray said, "you did the right thing. You did the right thing tonight. Walking out of the house, coming down here, sitting on this curb. You did exactly the right thing." Tyler looked at him. "I was scared. I know you were. Being scared is not the same as doing the wrong thing. Sometimes being scared is the body telling you to do exactly what you should do. Tonight your body told you to leave that house, and you listened. That makes you smart, Tyler, not weak." Tyler did not say anything. He was looking at the sidewalk. Ray looked at Big Frank. He looked at Donnie. He looked at Sammy. The 4 senior officers of the Black Eagles communicated with the small looks that men who had been working together for years could communicate with. The looks that took the place of words because they did not need words anymore. Ray stood up. The other senior officers stood up. The 80 bikers stood up around them. The semicircle reformed, taller now, the men towering over the small boy on the curb. "Tyler," Ray said, "I'm going to ask you a few more questions. Then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. Is that okay?" Tyler nodded. "Where do you live?" "What's the address?" Tyler told him. The address was 3 blocks up the street, a small duplex apartment. Ray knew the building. He had ridden past it hundreds of times. "What does Wade look like? How old is he? How tall is he?" Tyler described Wade, about 6 feet tall, skinny, late 30s, brown hair kind of long, a scar on his left cheek. He had a job. Tyler thought he worked at a warehouse somewhere. But Wade was always home in the evenings. He drove a red pickup truck. The truck was probably parked in front of their building right now. "Is Wade alone in the house with your mother right now?" "Yes." "Has Wade ever hit you?" Tyler hesitated. He looked at the ground. He nodded. "How many times?" "A few." "Has Wade ever hit your mother before tonight?" Tyler nodded again. "She doesn't tell anyone." Ray closed his eyes for a moment. He opened them. He looked at the bikers around him, The faces in the semicircle were calm, but the calm was the deep, dangerous calm of men who had been pushed past a certain line. Veterans knew this calm. The calm before something happened. The calm of men who were not going to allow a bad thing to continue. "Tyler," Ray said, "listen to me very carefully. You are safe now. You are not going back to that house tonight. We are going to make sure your mum is safe. We are going to make sure Wade does not hurt anyone else. We are going to do this the right way, with the police, with the people who handle these kinds of situations. But you are not alone anymore. Do you understand me? You walked out of that house tonight and you came to a curb across the street from a bar full of bikers. And you got the right bar. Because we are going to take care of this. Do you understand?" Tyler nodded slowly. He was looking at Ray. His eyes were wet, but he was not crying anymore. "Okay," Tyler said. Ray turned to Big Frank. "Frank, take Sammy and 3 other guys. Walk up the street and check the situation at the apartment. Quietly. Do not engage. Do not knock on the door. Just observe. I want to know if Wade is still there. I want to know if the mother is still in the apartment. I want to know if there are any signs of immediate danger. Then come back and report. Do not, and I mean this, Frank, do not do anything yourself. We are going to handle this with the police, but I want eyes on the house in case Wade tries to leave or in case the situation escalates." Big Frank nodded. He picked Sammy and 3 other senior members. Men Ray knew were level-headed and would not act out of anger. The 5 men separated from the group and started walking up the street toward the apartment building. Ray turned to Donnie. "Donnie, call 911 right now. Tell them you are reporting child abuse and possible domestic violence. Tell them where we are. Tell them what we have. Tell them we have the boy. Tell them we need someone to come immediately. Do not exaggerate. Do not minimize. Just tell them the facts." Donnie pulled out his phone. He started dialing. Ray turned to the rest of the bikers. "The rest of you, stay here, with me, with Tyler. We are going to wait for the police. We are going to wait for Frank's report. We are going to keep this boy warm and safe and fed until the people who handle these situations can get here. Boomer." He pointed to a member named Boomer, a 60-year-old who had served as a Navy corpsman in Vietnam and who was the closest thing the Black Eagles had to a medic. "Boomer, do you have your kit on your bike?" "Always do." "Get it. Check Tyler over. Make sure he's not hurt anywhere. Also, somebody, Maddox, you go inside the bar and ask Jerry to make a kid's grilled cheese and a glass of milk. Tyler, do you like grilled cheese?" Tyler nodded. "Okay, grilled cheese and milk. And tell Jerry to put it on my tab. And Sandy, you have the blanket on your bike, right?" A woman with iron grey hair and a leather vest covered in patches stepped forward. She was Sandy Wilcox, 62 years old, the chapter's longest-serving female member, a retired nurse, the wife of a Vietnam veteran who had died of cancer 15 years earlier and who had been a Black Eagle himself. "I have it," Sandy said. "Get it. Bring it here. We need to keep Tyler warm." The bikers moved. The 80 members of the Black Eagles became, in the next few minutes, a small, organized, humanitarian operation on a cold October sidewalk. Sandy went to her bike and came back with a thick wool blanket. She wrapped it around Tyler's shoulders gently, the way a grandmother wraps a grandchild. Boomer came back with his medical kit and crouched beside Tyler and asked if he had any pain anywhere. And Tyler said no, and Boomer checked his pulse
and his temperature and the small bruises on his arms. There were a few, faint, in different stages of healing, the kind of bruises that come from a person being grabbed too roughly by another person. And Boomer did not comment on the bruises, but he photographed them with his phone, the way a corpsman photographs evidence, because the bruises were going to matter later. Maddox came back from the bar with a paper plate holding a grilled cheese sandwich cut diagonally and a tall glass of milk. Tyler took the sandwich. He looked at Ray. He looked at the 80 bikers around him. Then he started eating. He had not realized how hungry he was. He ate the grilled cheese in about 90 seconds. He drank half the glass of milk in one continuous swallow. "Want another sandwich?" Ray asked. Tyler nodded. Maddox went back inside the bar. Donnie came over. He had finished the 911 call. "Police are on their way," he said. "ETA about 6 minutes. They're sending 2 units. They asked us to keep the boy here until they arrive and to identify ourselves so they don't show up thinking we're the problem." Good. A few minutes later, Big Frank and the 4 men he had taken came back. Big Frank's face was tight. Sammy's face was tight too. The other 3 men looked grim. "Ray," Frank said, "Wade is still there. Red pickup is in front of the building. We could hear him through the walls. He's in the apartment, yelling. The mother. We couldn't see her, but Wade was yelling at her, so she's there. We didn't hear her respond. Don't know what condition she's in. Anything else?" Big Frank hesitated. He looked at Tyler. He looked back at Ray. "There's something else, Ray. Something we need to talk about away from the boy. When you have a minute?" Ray nodded. "Tyler, eat your sandwich. Stay with Sandy and Boomer. I'll be right back." Tyler nodded. He kept eating. Sandy sat down beside him on the curb and put her arm around his shoulders, the blanket between them, the older woman's body warm against the small body of the boy. Ray walked about 30 feet down the sidewalk. Big Frank, Donnie, and Sammy followed. The 4 senior officers stood in a small huddle on the dark sidewalk. "What is it, Frank?" Ray asked. Big Frank lowered his voice. "When we were standing outside the building, I recognized the truck, the red pickup, the one Tyler said belongs to Wade." "Recognized it from where?" "Sammy did too. Show him, Sammy." Sammy pulled out his phone. He scrolled through it for a moment. He held it up. The screen showed a photograph. The photograph was a screenshot of a Facebook page, a public Facebook post from a community group. The post was from 3 weeks ago. It was about a hit-and-run incident that had happened on Route 35, about 10 miles outside of town. A motorcycle had been struck by a vehicle that had failed to stop. The motorcycle's rider, a man named Carl Patterson, 61 years old, a Vietnam veteran and a member of the Black Eagles, had been seriously injured. Multiple broken bones, a fractured skull. He had been in the hospital for 10 days. He was still in physical therapy. The post asked for any information about the vehicle that had struck Carl. The vehicle had been described by the only witness, a passing motorist who had been about a quarter mile behind, as a red pickup truck with a dent on the right front fender. Sammy zoomed in on the photograph attached to the post. The photograph showed the witness's description rendered as a sketch, a red pickup truck with a dent on the right front fender. Big Frank looked at Ray. "I just walked past that truck, the one parked in front of the boys' apartment building, the one Tyler says belongs to Wade. It has a dent on the right front fender. Same shape, same location, same red color." The 4 men were silent. Ray closed his eyes.
He opened them. He looked back at the small boy on the curb across the street. The boy was eating his second grilled cheese sandwich. The boy was alive. The boy was safe. The man who had probably hit Carl Patterson 3 weeks ago, the man who had left a fellow Black Eagle in a ditch and driven away, was the same man who was, at this moment, in an apartment 3 blocks up the street, possibly with an unconscious woman. Definitely a man who had hit and threatened a 7-year-old child. "Frank," Ray said, "are you absolutely sure?" "As sure as I can be without checking the VIN. The truck matches. Same year, same model, same color, same dent." Ray took a long, slow breath. The cold October air filled his lungs. He let it out slowly. "Okay," Ray said. "Here is what we are going to do. We are going to wait for the police. We are going to let the police handle the immediate situation. The boy's mother, the arrest of Wade. And then, after that, we are going to make absolutely sure the police know about the truck, about Carl, about the connection. Because if Wade is the one who hit Carl, he is going down for that too. We are not going to let him plead out of the assault on Linda and walk away from the hit and run. We are going to make sure the police have everything." Donnie nodded. Sammy nodded. Big Frank nodded. "All right," Ray said. "Let's get back to the boy. Police should be here any second." The 4 men walked back to the group. Tyler was finishing his second sandwich. Sandy still had her arm around him. The other bikers were standing in small clusters, talking quietly, watching the street for the arriving police cars. Ray sat down on the curb beside Tyler. He looked at the boy's small face. He looked at the bruises that Boomer had photographed. He thought about Carl Patterson in physical therapy. He thought about Linda Mitchell unconscious in an apartment 3 blocks away. "Tyler," Ray said, "the police are going to be here in just a minute. They are going to talk to you. They might ask you the same questions I asked you. I want you to tell them everything you told me. The truth. All of it. Don't be scared. Don't leave anything out. Okay?" "Okay." "And after that, the police are going to want to take care of you. They are going to take you somewhere safe. You might not see your mum for a little while because she has to go to the hospital. But I promise you that I am going to make sure your mum gets the help she needs. And I promise you that you are going to be okay. Do you trust me?" Tyler looked at Ray. He looked at the 80 bikers standing around them. He looked at Sandy beside him with her arm around his shoulders. "I trust you," Tyler said. Down the street, the first set of red and blue flashing lights appeared, coming around the corner. 2 police cars. The cars rolled slowly down the street toward the bar. The officers had been told what to expect. They had been told that there were bikers, that the bikers were not the problem, that the bikers had the boy. The officers parked their cars. They got out. They walked toward the group. The Black Eagles parted. They made a clear path between the police officers and Tyler and Ray. The officers walked through the path. They crouched in front of the boy. The handoff began. "Sigo con la parte tres." The lead officer was a woman in her 40s named Sergeant Maria Delgado. She had been with the city police department for 16 years. She had specialized training in domestic violence response and child welfare interviews. She had been the officer the dispatcher had specifically requested when Donnie called 911 and described the situation. The dispatcher had recognized that this was going to be a complicated case. A child, a possibly unconscious mother, an aggressive partner, and a large group of motorcycle club members who needed to be handled carefully, and had chosen to send the most experienced officer available. Sergeant Delgado crouched in front of Tyler. She kept her body relaxed. She did not reach for her radio or her notebook immediately. She just looked at him. "Hi, Tyler," she said. Her voice was warm, the kind of voice that women who work with children develop over years of practice. "My name is Maria. I'm a police officer. I'm here to help you. Is it okay if I sit with you for a few minutes and talk?" Tyler nodded. Sergeant Delgado sat down on the curb beside Tyler, on the opposite side from Sandy, so that Tyler had Sandy on one side and the police officer on the other. The other officer who had arrived, a younger man named Officer Brennan, stood a few feet back, giving Sergeant Delgado the space she needed for the interview. Ray stepped back. He stood with Big Frank and Donnie and Sammy, watching from about 10 feet away. The 80 Black Eagles formed a loose perimeter around the scene, not crowding, but present. They were bearing witness. They were making sure that the boy was treated correctly. They were making sure that the police knew that this child had 80 advocates standing on the street watching, and that the police would handle the case the way it deserved to be handled. Sergeant Delgado talked to Tyler for about 10 minutes. She asked the same questions Ray had asked. She listened the same way Ray had listened. She wrote down what Tyler said in a small notebook, the way Ray had. Tyler told the same story almost exactly that he had told the bikers, the mother on the bed, the man who lived with them, the yelling, the being told to leave, the walking down the street, the sitting on the curb, the bikers coming out of the bar. When Tyler finished, Sergeant Delgado closed her notebook. She put it in her pocket. She looked at Officer Brennan. She looked back at Tyler. "Tyler, you've been very brave tonight. Very brave. I want you to know that I believe you. Everything you told me, I believe. We are going to take care of your mum. We are going to take care of you. But right now, I need to do my job. I need to go check on your mum. So I'm going to leave you here, with Sandy and with these bikers, for just a few minutes. Officer Brennan is going to stay with you. Is that okay?" Tyler nodded. Sergeant Delgado stood up. She turned to Ray. She motioned for him to come over. Ray walked over. "You're the chapter president?" "I am. Ray Tilden." "Mr. Tilden, we have an ambulance and another officer, en route. We're going to handle the apartment. I appreciate what your group has done for this boy tonight. I want to ask you to stay back. Do not approach the apartment. Do not engage with the partner. Let us handle this. Can I count on you for that?" Ray looked at her. He thought about the red pickup truck. He thought about Carl Patterson. He thought about the connection that Big Frank had identified. "Sergeant, before you go up there, I need to tell you something. We have reason to believe the man in that apartment is also the suspect in a hit and run that happened 3 weeks ago. A motorcycle accident. The victim was one of our members, Carl Patterson. He's still in physical therapy." Sergeant Delgado raised her eyebrows. "How do you know this?" "The truck, the red pickup parked in front of the building. It matches the description from the only witness to the hit and run. Same color, same year, same dent on the right front fender. Same dent, same location. We have the case file from the original incident. There's a police sketch. I can have it sent to your phone in 2 minutes." Sergeant Delgado looked at Ray. She thought for a moment. "Send it, right now." Ray nodded at Sammy. Sammy pulled out his phone and texted the screenshot of the Facebook post and the police sketch to the number Sergeant Delgado gave him. Sergeant Delgado's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. She looked at the screenshot. She zoomed in. She looked at the sketch. She looked back at Ray. "You're certain?" "I'm not certain about the man, but I'm certain about the truck. And the man, Wade. Tyler said he came home tonight angry. Tyler said he's been getting drunk at night. Tyler said he yells about money. The hit and run was at about 10:30 at night on Route 35. That fits the pattern." Sergeant Delgado nodded slowly. She turned to Officer Brennan. She lowered her voice. "Brennan, get the case file on the Patterson hit and run pulled. Now. I want it on my phone before I go up there. We may have probable cause to add charges before this is over." Officer Brennan got on his radio. He started making the request. Sergeant Delgado turned back to Ray. "Mr. Tilden, I appreciate this. I really do. Now I need you and your members to stay here. Do not approach the building. We are going to handle this carefully because of the mother's potential medical condition. We do not want to escalate. We do not want a hostage situation. We do not want anything that would put the mother at greater risk. Do you understand me?" "I understand. Will your members listen to you on this?" Ray looked at the 80 bikers around him. He nodded. "They will." Sergeant Delgado walked back to her cruiser. The second police car had arrived during the conversation, and a third was now turning the corner at the end of the block. An ambulance was visible behind the third police car, its lights flashing but its siren off. The street was filling with emergency vehicles. The Iron Horse Tavern, which was usually quiet on a Friday night, except for the rumble of motorcycles, was now the center of a scene that the neighbors were starting to notice. Front doors opening up and down the street, people standing on porches, watching. Sergeant Delgado coordinated with the other officers. They formed a small tactical group. They walked together up the street toward the apartment building 3 blocks away. The ambulance followed slowly behind them, ready to respond if Linda needed immediate medical care. Ray turned to the bikers around him. "Everyone, listen to me. We are going to stay right here. Nobody walks up that street. Nobody approaches the apartment. We are going to let the police do their job. The police know about the truck. The police know about Carl. The police are going to handle it the right way. Our job is to take care of Tyler until he is in the right hands. Are we clear?" The bikers murmured assent. A few of them looked frustrated. They wanted to go up the street. They wanted to handle Wade themselves. The temptation was there, on the cold sidewalk, in the faces of the men who had just learned that the man in that apartment had probably hit one of their own 3 weeks ago. But Ray was the chapter president, and Ray had said no, and the discipline of the Black Eagles held. Tyler watched all of this from the curb. Officer Brennan was beside him. Sandy was on the other side. The boy was wrapped in the wool blanket. He had eaten 3 grilled cheese sandwiches now. He was warm. He was safe. He was watching the police walk up his street toward the apartment where his mother was, and he was processing, in the small, steady way that children process big things, the fact that his life had just been split into a before and an after. Ray sat down beside Tyler again. "What's going to happen now?" Tyler asked. His voice was quiet. "The police are going to go inside. They are going to make sure your mom is safe. The ambulance is going to take your mom to the hospital so the doctors can help her. The police are going to talk to Wade. Wade is probably going to be arrested tonight. And me? You're going to come with us. With the police, to the police station. They are going to take care of you. They are going to find a safe place for you to sleep tonight, probably with a foster family, or with a relative if you have one. Do you have any aunts or uncles or grandparents?" Tyler thought. "I have a grandma. She lives in a different state, Pennsylvania. What's her name? Grandma Rose. She's my mom's mom. She used to come visit us when I was little. But Mom and her had a fight a few years ago. They don't talk anymore. I don't know why. Do you know her phone number? Or her address? I know her name. Rose Mitchell. Think she lives in a town called Lewistown. I remember because my mom said Lewistown was a stupid name for a town. Ray nodded. That's helpful. Tyler, the police are going to try to reach your grandma. If she wants to take care of you, they will help arrange that. But for tonight, you might stay with a foster family. The foster family will be a nice family. They take care of kids who need a place to stay for a little while. You will be safe. You will have a bed. You will have food. Okay? Okay. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Mr. Ray, Tyler said. Yeah, Tyler. Will I see you again? Ray looked at the boy. He looked at his small face. He looked at the wool blanket wrapped around his shoulders. He looked at the 80 bikers standing around them. Yes, Ray said. You will see me again. I promise. The Black Eagles, that's our motorcycle club. We are going to make sure you are okay. Even after tonight, we are going to check on you. We are going to make sure you have what you need. You walked up to our bar tonight, Tyler. That means something. That means you are part of our family now. Do you understand? Tyler nodded. He did not fully understand, but he understood enough. About 15 minutes after the police walked up the street, the radios crackled. Officer Brennan listened. He nodded. He looked at Ray. They have the apartment secured, Officer Brennan said. The mother is alive. She's unconscious but breathing. The paramedics are with her now. They're transporting her to St. Mary's Hospital. The partner, Wade, is in custody. They had to subdue him. He resisted. But they have him. He's being transported to county jail. Ray let out a long, slow breath. He had not realized he was holding it. Good. And the truck. They ran the plates. The truck is registered to Wade Garrison, 36 years old. Has a record. Multiple DUIs, one assault charge from 5 years ago that got pleaded down. And Officer Brennan paused. The truck has the dent. They photographed it. The forensics team is on its way to the apartment building. They're going to process the truck for paint transfer from Mr. Patterson's motorcycle. Ray nodded. He's done, Big Frank said, quietly, to Ray. He's done. They're going to put him away for everything. Sandy was holding Tyler. The boy had laid his head against her shoulder. The exhaustion of the night was catching up with him. He was small and tired and warm and surrounded by people who were taking care of him for the first time in a very long time. Officer Brennan, Ray said. What's the plan for Tyler? Sergeant Delgado is calling Child Protective Services right now. They will send a worker to take custody of the boy. The worker will arrange a foster placement for tonight. They will start working on contacting any relatives, like the grandmother in Pennsylvania, first thing in the morning. How long until the CPS worker gets here? Maybe an hour, maybe more. It's Friday night. They're stretched. Ray looked at Tyler. The boy's eyes were closing. He was on the edge of sleep. Officer Brennan, I'd like to take Tyler inside the bar while we wait. He's been on this curb for over an hour. It's cold. We can put him in a quiet booth in the back. Get him warm. Maybe he can sleep a little. Sandy will stay with him the whole time. So will I. So will the senior officers. The bar is not... Ray paused. I know it's not a normal place for a child, but Jerry, the owner, is a Marine. He'll clear the back room. We will keep the boy safe. Officer Brennan thought for a moment. Let me check with Sergeant Delgado. He got on his radio. He explained the request. There was a pause. Then Sergeant Delgado's voice came back through the radio. She approved. Ray and Sandy walked Tyler across the street. Ray opened the front door of the Iron Horse Tavern. The boy walked inside. The bar was quiet now. Most of the 80 bikers were still outside on the street, waiting. The few who were inside were sitting at tables, talking quietly, watching as Ray and Sandy walked Tyler past them and into the back room. The back room was where the chapter held its meetings. It had a large rectangular table and chairs and a few couches against the walls. Jerry, the owner, had heard what was happening and had cleared the room. He had put a clean pillow and a folded blanket on one of the couches. The blanket was a soft fleece. It was something Jerry had brought from his own house, from his own daughter's old bedroom. Jerry was a Marine, and Marines understood that sometimes you do things without being asked because the moment requires you to do them. Sandy walked Tyler to the couch. The boy sat down. He took off his sneakers, the worn-out ones, with the hole in the toe. Sandy adjusted the pillow for him. She wrapped the fleece blanket around him on top of the wool one she had given him earlier. The boy lay down. He curled into himself. His head was on the pillow. His eyes were closing. "Sandy," Tyler said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Yeah, sweetheart. Will you stay?" "I will stay. The whole time. And Mr. Ray, he'll stay too. He's not going anywhere. And the bikers, they're right outside, sweetheart. 80 of them. Nobody is going to bother you tonight." Tyler closed his eyes. Within 2 minutes, he was asleep. Sandy sat down on the floor beside the couch. She crossed her legs. She rested her arm gently on the boy's back so that he would feel the weight of her hand even in his sleep, would know that she was still there. Ray sat down in a chair near the door. Big Frank and Donnie and Sammy came in and sat down too. The senior officers of the Black Eagles kept watch over a sleeping 7-year-old boy in the back room of a biker bar on a Friday night in October. The CPS worker arrived an hour later. Her name was Diane. She was in her 50s. She had been doing this work for 23 years. She had seen a lot. She came into the back room and looked at the sleeping boy and the grey-haired bikers watching over him. She did not seem surprised. She had probably seen stranger things. "Mr. Tilden," she said quietly to Ray. "Yes, I'm Diane Markowitz from CPS. I'm here for Tyler. He's been asleep for an hour. I'm going to need to wake him to take him to the foster placement. I'm sorry, the foster family is waiting up. They need to receive him tonight." Ray nodded. Sandy gently shook Tyler awake. The boy's eyes opened slowly. He looked confused. He looked at Sandy. He looked around the room. He saw Ray. "Tyler," Ray said, "this is Diane. She's going to take you to a safe place to sleep for the rest of the night. A nice family. They are expecting you. Sandy and I are going to walk you to her car." Tyler nodded sleepily. He sat up. He put on his shoes. Sandy helped him with the blanket. He kept it. Diane had said he could keep it. The fleece blanket from Jerry's daughter's bedroom went home with the boy. They walked outside. The 80 bikers were still on the street. They had not gone back to the bar. They had stayed on the cold sidewalk for the entire 2 hours, in case they were needed, in case anything else happened. When Tyler walked out of the bar with Ray and Sandy and Diane, the bikers were quiet. They watched the boy walk to Diane's car. They watched Diane open the back door. They watched Sandy lean down and hug Tyler one more time. The kind of hug that an old woman gives a child she has only known for 2 hours, but who has become, in those 2 hours, important. Tyler got into the car. He looked out the window at the 80 bikers. The bikers raised their hands. 80 hands in the cold October air, raised in farewell to a small boy they had met that night and who they were not going to forget. Tyler raised his hand back. Through the car window, a small wave from a small boy in a fleece blanket sitting in a CPS worker's car. Diane drove away. The Black Eagles stood on the street and watched the car turn the corner and disappear. Ray stood beside Sandy. Big Frank stood beside Ray. The 4 senior officers stood together in the cold. "All right," Ray said. "Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, senior officers meeting at my house. We have a lot to figure out." "What do you mean?" Sammy asked. "I mean, we are not done with this case. We are not even close to done. The boy is going to need help. The mother is going to need help. The grandmother, if she exists, if she will take the boy, is going to need help. And Wade is going down for the assault on Linda, and probably for the hit and run on Carl, but we need to make sure the prosecutor has everything they need to put him away for as long as possible." "You're talking about the club getting involved." "I'm talking about the club doing what the club exists to do. We are veterans. We take care of our own. Carl is one of ours. Tyler is one of ours now too. That boy walked up to our bar tonight, and we are not going to let him fall through the cracks of a system that is overworked and underfunded. We are going to be his safety net. Are we agreed?" Big Frank nodded. Donnie nodded. Sammy nodded. "We're agreed," Big Frank said. Sandy walked over. She had been listening. "I want in," Sandy said, "on whatever this is. I'm a retired nurse. I can help with Linda's recovery. I have some experience with addiction recovery. I worked at a rehab facility for 10 years. I can be useful." Ray nodded. "Sandy, you're in." The Black Eagles slowly began to break up. Some of the members went back into the bar to finish their drinks. Some got on their motorcycles and rode home. The Friday night chapter meeting that had been scheduled for 10 o'clock had been forgotten. The 80 bikers had spent their meeting on a sidewalk organized around a 7-year-old boy in a wool blanket, and the formal agenda would have to wait until next Friday. Ray got on his motorcycle. He started the engine. He sat for a moment, with the deep, familiar rumble of his Harley filling the cold night, and he looked up at the stars above the small city. He thought about Tyler. He thought about Linda Mitchell, who was being admitted to St. Mary's Hospital right now. He thought about Wade Garrison, who was being booked into county jail. He thought about Carl Patterson, who was at home with his wife, recovering from a fractured skull. Ray put his motorcycle in gear. He rode home through the empty streets. He arrived at his small house just before midnight. He parked the bike. He went inside. His wife, Helen, was awake. She had been waiting up the way she always waited up when Ray was at chapter meetings. "Long night?" Helen asked. "Longer than usual." "You want to tell me about it?" Ray sat down at the kitchen table. He took off his vest. He looked at his wife of 42 years. He thought about the boy on the curb. He thought about the 80 bikers who had sat down on the cold pavement to be at the boy's eye level. He thought about Sandy holding the boy on the couch in the back room of the bar. "Helen," Ray said, "tonight a 7-year-old boy walked up to our bar. He needed help. We helped him. There's a lot more work to do. I think," he paused. He thought about how to say it. "I think we just adopted a little brother into the club. Helen looked at him. She knew what he meant. She had been a Black Eagle wife for 26 years. She knew the language. She knew what it meant when Ray said the club had adopted someone. "Tell me everything," Helen said. Ray told her. He sat at the kitchen table and told his wife the whole story. About the curb, about the grilled cheese, about the truck, about Carl, about Linda, about Wade, about the 80 bikers and the cold sidewalk and the small boy who had fallen asleep on a couch in the back room of a biker bar. Helen listened. When Ray was finished, she stood up. She walked to the cabinet. She got down 2 glasses. She poured them each a small whiskey. She brought the glasses to the table. She sat down across from him. "To Tyler," Helen said, raising her glass. "To Tyler," Ray said. They drank. Outside, the cold October night continued. Somewhere across the city, in a foster family's spare bedroom, a small boy slept under a fleece blanket from a Marine's daughter's old bedroom. Somewhere else, in a hospital room, an unconscious woman was being treated for an opioid overdose and the bruises on her face and ribs. Somewhere else, in a county jail cell, a man named Wade Garrison was sitting on a metal bench, beginning to understand that his life had just ended. And somewhere across the city, in a small house, an old biker and his wife sat at a kitchen table and made a quiet decision that would, over the next several months, change the lives of a number of people none of them had known existed 3 hours earlier. The Black Eagles had a new mission. The mission was named Tyler. Sigo con la parte 4. Saturday morning came cold and bright. Ray was up at 6. He made coffee. He sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. The same kind of pad Frank Delano had used when the Diner Boys raised the money for his granddaughter's surgery. The same kind of pad that men of a certain generation used when they had a problem to solve and needed to write everything down. Ray made a list. The list had 3 columns. The first column was Tyler. The second column was Linda. The third column was Wade. Under each column, Ray wrote the things that needed to happen, the people who needed to be contacted, the resources that needed to be gathered. Under Tyler, find Grandma Rose. Verify she is willing and able to take him. Help her with travel costs. Help her with legal costs if there is a custody battle. Make sure Tyler has clothes, a backpack, school supplies. Visit him at the foster home if allowed. Be available if he needs anything. Under Linda, hospital. What room, what condition? Contact addiction recovery resources. Sandy, lead on this. Make sure Linda has someone to advocate for her in the medical and legal systems. Long-term recovery plan, job assistance when she's ready. Under WADE, get the case file from Carl's hit and run to the prosecutor. Make sure the assault and the hit and run are connected in the charging documents. Attend court dates. Make sure Wade does not see daylight for as long as possible. The senior officers arrived at 8. Big Frank, Donnie, Sammy. Sandy too. Ray had texted her at 6, and she had come over. They sat at the kitchen table. Helen made more coffee. They went through the list. I called the hospital this morning, Sandy said. I have a friend who's a nurse there. She's going to keep me updated on Linda's condition. They got her stabilized last night. Naloxone reversal worked. She regained consciousness about 3 this morning. She's been in and out since then. Withdrawal is going to start in the next 12 hours. She's going to be sick. Then they'll move her to detox. Insurance? Ray asked. Sketchy. She's on Medicaid. The hospital will treat her, but she's going to need a real recovery program after. And Medicaid coverage for that kind of treatment it's complicated. She might be on a waiting list. She might end up in a state-run program that's not the best. What would the best look like? The best would be a 30-day inpatient program at a place like Hartford Recovery Center, about 60 miles north. They have a bed wait of about 3 weeks, but if she gets in, she'd have a real chance. Cost without insurance is about $35,000. Medicaid covers maybe a third of that. Ray wrote down the number. $35,000. He wrote down Hartford Recovery Center beside it. What about Tyler? Big Frank asked. Donnie had been making calls already. The CPS worker placed him with a family on the west side last night. Foster family named the Andersons. 2 kids of their own, both teenagers. They've been fostering for about 4 years. CPS says they're a good placement. Tyler is safe. Has CPS contacted the grandmother? They started this morning. They're using the name Tyler gave us, Rose Mitchell, Lewistown, Pennsylvania. They confirmed she exists. She's 73 years old, lives alone. Husband died about 6 years ago. She owns a small house in Lewistown. They're going to call her this morning. Ray nodded. He thought about Lewistown. He had ridden through Lewistown 100 times on his way through the Susquehanna Valley. It was the same Lewistown that Frank Delano's loop went through every Saturday morning, the same Lewistown that Ray would not learn until much later was about 200 miles from where the Black Eagles met every Friday night, a coincidence that connected in ways nobody would notice at the time. 2 stories that were both about veterans and motorcycles and the small, steady ways that decent men show up for people who need them. I want to talk to her, Ray said. Before CPS does, if possible, or after. I want to introduce myself. I want to tell her what we are willing to do. Money, travel, whatever she needs. She doesn't know you, Ray. She might be suspicious. I know. That's why I'm going to ride up there. In person. Sometimes you have to show up at someone's door for them to take you seriously. Sandy nodded. I'll go with you. A retired nurse in her 60s is less threatening than a 68-year-old biker in a leather vest. We'll go together. The plan formed. Ray and Sandy would ride to Lewistown that day. They would find Rose Mitchell's house. They would introduce themselves. They would explain who they were and what they had done for Tyler the night before. They would ask gently if Rose was willing to take her grandson. The other senior officers would handle the rest. Big Frank would coordinate with the prosecutor's office about the connection between Wade and the hit and run on Carl. Sammy would handle outreach to the Foster family. They would visit, bring Tyler some clothes and books, let him know that the Black Eagles were checking in on him. Donnie would handle the fundraising. The club had a small emergency fund of about $4,000, but more would be needed, and Donnie would put out the call to the membership and to the wider riding community. By 10 in the morning, Ray and Sandy were on Ray's Harley, Sandy on the back. They rode south on the highway, then east toward Pennsylvania. The day was cold and clear. The Susquehanna Valley was at the very end of its autumn color, the last leaves clinging to the trees, the rest scattered on the ground in drifts of brown and gold. The ride took about 3 hours. They reached Lewistown just after 1 in the afternoon. Ray had the address from Donnie, Rose Mitchell, 218 Maple Street. They pulled up in front of a small white house with green shutters and a wooden porch. The yard was neat. The porch had 2 rocking chairs and a small table between them. A potted geranium sat on the table, still flowering despite the cold.
Ray and Sandy walked up to the porch. Ray knocked. The door opened. The woman who answered was small, maybe 5'2", with white hair in a tight bun, a face deeply lined with age, and pale blue eyes that were sharp despite her years. She was wearing a cardigan and slacks and slippers. She looked at Ray. She looked at Sandy. She looked at Ray's leather vest with the patches. "Yes," she said. Her voice was cautious. "Mrs. Mitchell, my name is Ray Tilden. This is Sandy Wilcox. We're not from the police. We're not from CPS. We're from a motorcycle club called the Black Eagles. We were with your grandson last night when he was taken into custody. May we come in and talk to you?" Rose Mitchell looked at them. She looked at Ray's beard and patches. She looked at Sandy's gentler appearance. She looked back at Ray. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Ray reached into his vest pocket. He pulled out his phone. He scrolled to the photographs that Boomer had taken the night before. The photograph of Tyler in the wool blanket. The photograph of the foster placement paperwork. The photograph of the police report he had received that morning. He held the phone up so Rose could see. Rose looked at the photographs. Her hand went to her mouth. "My God, that's Tyler. That's my Tyler. He's so big now." She started to cry. The crying was not loud. It was the contained crying of an older woman who had learned, over many years, to keep her tears small. "Please come in," Rose said. She led them into a small living room. The room was clean and organized. There were photographs on the walls, old photographs, family photographs, photographs of Linda when she was young, photographs of a man who must have been Rose's late husband, photographs of a small boy who must have been Tyler when he was a baby. The photographs of Tyler stopped when he was about 4. There were no recent ones. Rose sat down in a chair. She motioned for Ray and Sandy to sit on the couch. "Linda and I had a falling out," Rose said. "About 4 years ago. She got involved with a man, not Wade, an earlier one, and she made some choices I did not agree with. We argued. We said things. She stopped calling. I tried to reach out, but she would not return my calls. After about a year, I gave up. I have been alone since then. My husband died 6 years ago. My only child stopped speaking to me 4 years ago. I have spent the last 4 years sitting in this house, wondering about my grandson, wondering if he was okay, wondering if I would ever see him again." She wiped her eyes with a tissue from a box on the side table. "Tell me everything," Rose said. "Tell me what happened to my daughter. Tell me what happened to Tyler. Tell me what is happening right now," Ray told her. Sandy filled in the parts about Linda's medical condition. They told her about the curb, about the bar, about the 80 bikers, about the foster home, about the hospital, about Wade and the truck, and the connection to Carl Patterson. They told her everything they knew in the same calm, matter-of-fact way that Big Frank had told Ray about the truck the night before. Without dramatizing, without minimizing, just the facts. Rose listened. She cried throughout. She did not interrupt. When they were finished, she sat for a long time with her tissue in her hand, looking at her lap. "I want him," Rose said. "I want my grandson. I want him to come live with me. I have been alone for 4 years, and I have been thinking about him every day, and if he can come live with me, that is all I want." "There may be a custody process," Sandy said. "It may take some time. CPS will have to evaluate your home, your finances, your health. Are you in good health?" "I'm 73. I have arthritis. I have high blood pressure. I take medication for both. But I'm not sick.
I can take care of a child. I raised one child already. I know how to do it. Will you have the financial resources? Rose paused. I have my social security. I have my husband's small pension. I own this house, paid off. I don't have a lot, but I have enough for the two of us. It would be tight. I might need help with some things. School clothes, medical care, maybe a tutor if Tyler is behind in school. Mrs. Mitchell, Ray said, listen to me. The Black Eagles, our motorcycle club, we have decided that we are going to help with this situation. Whatever Tyler needs, whatever you need to take care of him, we will help. Money, resources, people to talk to, people to advocate for you with CPS, people to drive you to court hearings if you need them. Whatever it takes. We are not asking for anything in return. We are not trying to be involved in your life beyond what you want. But your grandson came to our bar last night. We are going to take care of him. That includes taking care of you, if you were the one taking care of him. Rose looked at Ray. She looked at Sandy. She looked at her hands. Why? Rose asked. You don't know us. Why are you doing this? Ray thought about it. Because Tyler showed up, Ray said. Last night, on a curb across the street from our bar, he showed up. He needed help. We helped him. That's what we do. We are veterans. We have spent our lives helping people who showed up. It does not matter that we did not know him. He showed up. He's ours now, and you are his grandmother, so you are ours too, if you'll have us. Rose's eyes filled with tears again. I'll have you, she said. I will absolutely have you. They stayed at Rose's house for 2 hours. They drank tea. They ate cookies that Rose had made the day before. Molasses cookies, the kind that women of her generation made because they had been making them for 50 years, and they were still good. They talked about Tyler, about what he liked, about what he had been like as a small child the last time Rose had seen him, about what he might need now. Sandy made a list of practical things. Tyler would need clothes, school clothes, winter clothes, pajamas. He would need a backpack and school supplies. He would need a bed in Rose's spare bedroom. Rose said she could put one of her old beds back in there, but a fresh mattress would be welcome. He would need to be enrolled in a school in Lewistown. He would need to have his medical and dental records transferred. Sandy wrote everything down on her own legal pad. Ray made a different kind of list. He made a list of money. The cost of getting Rose to come to the city to meet with CPS. The cost of the lawyer she might need to navigate the custody process. The cost of clothes and supplies and the bed. The cost of any therapy Tyler might need to process what he had been through. The cost, eventually, of the recovery program for Linda, because Rose had said, before Ray and Sandy left, that she wanted Linda to have a real chance to recover and to rebuild a relationship with Tyler, which meant that Linda needed to get into a real program, not the bottom-of-the-barrel one her Medicaid would cover. When they finally left Rose's house, late in the afternoon, Ray had a clear picture of what the Black Eagles were going to be funding. The number was somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 over the next year, depending on how things played out. He and Sandy got back on the Harley. They rode home. The afternoon light was fading. The air was cold. They rode in silence for the first hour. Sandy's hands were on Ray's waist. The motorcycle moved steadily through the rolling Pennsylvania hills, through the small towns, past the farms. They reached the city just after dark. Ray dropped Sandy off at her house. Then he rode home. He parked the Harley in the garage. He went inside. Helen had dinner ready. "How did it go?" Helen asked. "She wants him. She wants him completely. She's been waiting for him for 4 years." "And the money?" 40 to 60,000 over the next year. That's my estimate." Helen nodded. She had been a Black Eagle wife long enough to know what was coming. "You're going to put out the call to the riding community." "I am." "How wide?" "As wide as it needs to go." The call went out on Sunday morning. Donnie had a network. Big Frank had a network. Sammy had a network. Ray had been chapter president for 6 years and had personally attended dozens of chapter meetings of other clubs across 3 states. The phone calls started. The story they told was simple. A 7-year-old boy named Tyler had walked up to the Iron Horse Tavern on a Friday night because his mother had been overdosed by her boyfriend, and the boyfriend had thrown the kid out of the house. 80 Black Eagles had taken him in. The mother was in the hospital. The boyfriend was in jail and was probably the same man who had hit and run a Black Eagle named Carl Patterson 3 weeks ago. The boy had a grandmother in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, who wanted him. She needed help. The story spread the way these stories always spread in the riding community, from one chapter to another, from one club to another. Within a week, the story had reached chapters across Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Maryland, New York. Within 2 weeks, it had reached the Patriot Riders, who had welcomed Frank Delano with 120 motorcycles in 2011. Within 3 weeks, it had reached chapters in Florida, Texas, California, places where the Black Eagles had connections through veterans networks. The donations started arriving. They came in small amounts, mostly $20, $50, $100. The occasional $500 check from a chapter that had voted to support the cause. They came from clubs Ray had never heard of. They came from individual riders who had read about the situation on motorcycle forums and who had wanted to help. They came in envelopes addressed to Black Eagles MC, Tyler Fund. By the end of the first month, the fund had grown to $28,000. By the end of the second month, it was at $43,000. By the end of the third month, late January, the fund had reached $61,000. The money went where it was needed. Some of it went to Rose for clothes and school supplies and a fresh mattress for the spare bedroom. Some of it went to the lawyer who handled the custody case. Some of it went to Linda's recovery program at Hartford Recovery Center, where she was admitted in mid-December after spending 5 weeks in the hospital and the county detox facility. Some of it went into a trust account for Tyler's future, for college eventually, if he wanted to go. The custody case took 4 months. Tyler stayed with the Anderson foster family during that time. Sammy and Ray and Sandy visited him every Sunday. They brought him gifts, a backpack, a winter coat, books, eventually a small dirt bike that he could ride in the Andersons' backyard. They told him about his grandmother. They showed him photographs of Rose's house in Lewistown. Rose had sent them, on Sandy's request, photographs of the spare bedroom that was being prepared for Tyler, photographs of the backyard, photographs of the elementary school he would attend. Tyler asked about his mother every visit. Ray and Sandy told him the truth in age-appropriate ways. His mother was sick. His mother was getting help. His mother was working hard to get better. His mother loved him very much and wanted to see him as soon as she was well enough. In late February, the custody case was decided. Rose Mitchell was awarded full custody of Tyler. Tyler moved to Lewistown in early March. Ray and Sandy drove him to Pennsylvania themselves in Sandy's small SUV with a U-Haul trailer behind it carrying the boys' belongings. Tyler sat in the back seat and looked out the window for the entire 3-hour drive. He did not say much. He was processing. He was about to start a new life. They arrived at Rose's house in the early afternoon. Rose was on the porch, waiting. She was dressed in her best clothes, a blue dress, a string of pearls that had belonged to her own mother, her hair carefully pinned up. She was crying before Tyler even got out of the car. Tyler got out. He looked at the small white house with the green shutters. He looked at the woman on the porch. "Grandma Rose," he said. "Yes, baby. It's me." Tyler walked up the porch steps slowly. He looked at her. "I remember you," he said. "I remember you used to make me waffles." Rose laughed and cried at the same time. "I still make waffles. I made some this morning. They're waiting in the kitchen." She opened her arms. Tyler walked into them. Rose hugged him. She hugged him for a long time. She hugged him the way a grandmother hugs a grandchild she has been thinking about every day for 4 years. She hugged him hard enough that the boy could feel, in his small bones, the years of waiting that had finally ended. Ray and Sandy stood at the bottom of the porch steps and watched. They did not interrupt. They let the grandmother and grandchild have their moment. Sandy was crying. Ray's eyes were wet. They had carried this boy for 4 months, from a curb in a cold October night to a porch in a small Pennsylvania town, and the carrying was now over. The boy was home. After a while, Rose looked up. She looked at Ray and Sandy. "Come in," Rose said. "I have waffles." They went inside. They ate waffles. Tyler ate 3 of them. He asked Rose to show him his bedroom. Rose led him upstairs. Tyler saw the bed with the new mattress and the dresser and the small desk where he would do his homework and the toy chest in the corner where Rose had been collecting toys for him for the past 2 months. He saw the photographs on the wall. Photographs of him as a baby. Photographs of his mother when she was young. Photographs of his grandfather, who had died before Tyler had ever met him. "This is my room?" Tyler asked. "This is your room." Tyler walked to the bed. He sat down on it. He bounced once, gently. He looked at his grandmother. "I'm staying here," Tyler said. "Right? I'm staying here." "You're staying here, baby. Forever, if you want." Tyler nodded. He lay back on the bed. He stretched out. He looked at the ceiling. He was home. Ray and Sandy stayed for another hour. Then they left. They drove back to the city. They got home late that night. The Black Eagles had completed their mission. Tyler was safe. Tyler was with family. Tyler was going to grow up in a small Pennsylvania town with a grandmother who loved him and a network of motorcycle riders across multiple states who had decided that he was theirs to look after. But the story was not quite over. There were still 2 threads that needed to be tied. The first thread was Wade. The second thread was Linda. And both of them, in the months that followed, would close in their own particular ways. Sigo con la parte 5. Wade Garrison's case moved through the criminal justice system with the slow, grinding inevitability that these cases always move through. He was charged with multiple counts: the assault on Linda, the endangerment of a child, the hit and run on Carl Patterson, confirmed by the forensic team that had matched the paint on Wade's truck bumper to the paint on Carl's destroyed motorcycle. Driving under the influence, possession of controlled substances, a search of the apartment had uncovered a significant quantity of fentanyl and oxycodone tablets that Wade had been using to keep Linda compliant. The Black Eagles attended every court date, not all 80 members, but always at least a dozen. They sat in the back rows of the courtroom in their leather vests with the patches removed, a courtroom rule. But in their leather vests, nonetheless, with their long grey beards and their steady, silent presence. They never said anything in court. They never made any disturbance. They simply sat, watching, bearing witness, making sure the prosecutor and the judge and the defense attorney all understood that this case was being watched by people who cared. Carl Patterson came to court on the day he was scheduled to testify about the hit and run. Carl was 61 years old. He walked with a cane now. He had a metal plate in his head from the surgery to repair his fractured skull. He had not yet gotten back on a motorcycle. He was not sure he would. The trauma of the accident had been deep and the recovery had been long, and Carl was at peace with the possibility that his riding days might be over. Carl took the stand. The prosecutor walked him through the events of the night 3 weeks before Tyler had walked up to the curb. Carl had been riding home from a club meeting at the Iron Horse. He had been on Route 35, about 10 miles outside the city, when a vehicle had come up behind him at high speed. He remembered the headlights. He remembered the impact. He remembered very little after that. He had woken up in the hospital 10 days later. The hit and run had not been seen by Carl in the sense that he could not identify the driver, but the forensic evidence, the paint match, the dent on the truck, the timing was overwhelming. Wade's defense attorney tried to cross-examine. He tried to suggest that the timing was coincidental, that the paint match was not conclusive, that there were other red trucks in the area. The prosecutor came back with the data. The probability that 2 red Ford F-150s with the exact same dent in the exact same location would happen to be in the area at the times in question was vanishingly small. Combined with the assault charges and the drug possession and Wade's prior record, the evidence was decisive. Wade took a plea deal in late April, 22 years. He would not be eligible for parole for 15 of those years. By the time he could potentially be released, Tyler would be 22 years old. Linda would be in her mid-50s. Carl, if he lived that long, would be in his 70s. 22 years. The Black Eagles attended the sentencing. Carl was there, in his cane, in his good shirt, with his wife beside him. Ray was there. Big Frank was there. Sandy was there. About 15 Black Eagles in total, sitting in the back rows, watching as the judge announced the sentence. When the sentence was read, the courtroom was silent. Wade stood at the defense table, his hands cuffed, his face blank. He had been told what the sentence would be. He had agreed to it. But hearing it announced in court, in the formal language of the criminal justice system, had a finality that no plea negotiation could replicate. Wade was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He was put into a van. He was driven to the state correctional institution where he would spend the next 15 to 22 years of his life. The Black Eagles walked out of the courthouse together. They stood on the front steps in the spring sunlight. They did not celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. A man's life had just been disposed of, the way the criminal justice system disposes of lives, efficiently, finally, without any meaningful attempt at rehabilitation. The Black Eagles were not naive about the system. They knew what 22 years in prison did to a person. They were not happy that another human being was going to spend his middle age and the early part of his old age behind bars. But they were also not sorry. Wade had hit a black eagle and left him in a ditch. Wade had assaulted the mother of a 7-year-old boy and had thrown the boy out into the cold to fend for himself. Wade had been part of a system of harm that was now, finally, being interrupted. The interruption was necessary. The interruption was just. The interruption did not feel good, but justice rarely feels good when it is delivered. Justice usually just feels final. Carl walked over to Ray. He put his hand on Ray's shoulder. "Thank you," Carl said. "For what?" "For making sure he was caught. For making sure he didn't walk away from what he did to me." Ray looked at Carl. He looked at his old friend's face, the face that had been remade by reconstructive surgery after the impact with the road. He looked at the cane. He looked at the metal in Carl's head that he could not see but knew was there. "You don't have to thank me, Carl. We are the Black Eagles. That's what we do. Still, thank you." The two old men hugged. The other Black Eagles stood around them on the courthouse steps. Then they all walked to their motorcycles and rode home through the spring afternoon. Linda Mitchell completed her 30-day program at Hartford Recovery Center on April 15th. She was discharged with a treatment plan, a sponsor, a schedule of outpatient meetings, and a small bag of clothes and personal items that Sandy had brought to her over the course of her stay. Linda was 34 years old. She had been addicted to opioids for 2.5 years. She had been hospitalized after an overdose induced by her boyfriend, who was now in prison. She had lost custody of her son, who was living with her mother, the same mother she had not spoken to in 4 years. Linda's recovery was not over when she left Hartford. The recovery had only just begun. The first 30 days were the easy part, the medical part, the controlled environment part, the part where the substances were physically out of her body. The hard part was what came next, the rebuilding, the relearning how to be a person without chemical assistance, the facing of the things she had done while she had been using, including the things she had done to her son and to her mother and to her own life. Sandy had been visiting Linda at Hartford every week. Sandy had been doing this work, supporting people in recovery, for years before she had retired from nursing. She knew what to say and what not to say. She knew when to push and when to wait. She had become, over the course of Linda's stay, something like a mentor and something like a friend, though Sandy was careful not to call herself either of those things, because Linda had a sponsor for the official mentor role, and Sandy did not want to confuse the boundaries of recovery support. When Linda was discharged, Sandy picked her up. She drove her to a small studio apartment that the Black Eagles had arranged through a contact, a sober living facility on the east side of the city, run by a recovery foundation, where Linda could live for up to 6 months while she rebuilt her life. The rent was subsidized. The community was strict. Sobriety was monitored. Meetings were mandatory. Work or school was required. Linda had agreed to all of it. Linda's first request was to see Tyler. Sandy had been expecting this. Sandy had already been talking to Rose about it for weeks. Rose had been talking to Tyler about it. Tyler had been seeing a child therapist in Lewistown, paid for by the Black Eagles, who had been helping him process the events of the past months. The therapist had told Rose that Tyler was ready to see his mother. But there were conditions. The visit needed to be supervised. The visit needed to be on Tyler's terms, at a place he was comfortable, with people he trusted nearby, with a clear way to end the visit if he wanted to. Linda needed to understand that the visit was not about her. It was about Tyler. Linda needed to be prepared to listen more than she talked. Linda needed to be prepared for the possibility that Tyler would have anger, confusion, mixed feelings. The visit was scheduled for early May, a Saturday. At a park in Lewistown, Tyler's choice. The therapist would be present. Rose would be present. Sandy would drive Linda up. Ray would come too. Tyler had asked specifically that Mr. Ray be there. Linda was nervous for 2 weeks before the visit. She talked to Sandy on the phone every day. She practiced what she would say. She wrote letters to Tyler that she did not send because the therapist had advised against any contact before the in-person visit. She went to her meetings. She worked her steps. She did the slow, patient work of staying sober one day at a time. The morning of the visit, Sandy picked Linda up at 6. They drove to Lewistown. They arrived at the park at 10. The park was small, a playground, a few picnic tables, a baseball diamond. The trees were just starting to fill in with the new green of spring. The morning was cool, but the day was going to be warm. Tyler arrived at 10:30 with Rose and the therapist. Ray arrived a few minutes later. He had ridden up that morning on his Harley, alone, because he wanted to give Tyler the moment he had asked for, which was that Mr. Ray would come. Tyler saw his mother for the first time in 7 months. Linda saw her son for the first time in 7 months. Both of them stood frozen at first. The park was quiet. Other families were there, parents pushing children on swings, an old man walking a small dog. But the small drama at the picnic tables was happening in its own bubble of attention. Sandy stood near Linda. Rose stood near Tyler. The therapist stood at a respectful distance, watching. Linda took a step forward. She stopped. She looked at her son. "Tyler," she said. Her voice was small. Tyler looked at her. He had grown over the past 7 months. He was nearly an inch taller. He had filled out a little. Rose had been feeding him well, and the food was working. His clothes were new and clean. His hair was cut neatly. He looked like a child who was being cared for, who was healthy, who was loved. Linda looked different too. She had gained back the weight she had lost during her addiction. Her face had filled in. Her eyes were clear. She looked, for the first time in years, like the woman she had been before the pills had taken her. But Tyler did not remember that woman. Tyler had only ever known the woman who slept too much and could not always wake up. "Hi, Mom," Tyler said. Linda walked the rest of the way to her son. She stopped about 3 feet from him. She did not try to hug him. The therapist had told her not to. Physical contact had to come from Tyler on his timing, when he was ready. "Tyler, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. For everything." Tyler looked at her. His face was serious. He was processing. "You were sick," Tyler said. "Yes, I was sick. I'm still working on getting better. I'm better now than I was, but I'm still working on it. Are you going to be okay?" "I'm going to try very hard, Tyler. I cannot promise I will be okay. But I can promise that I'm going to try every day. I'm going to a meeting every day. I'm working very hard." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Wade is in jail," Tyler said. It was not a question. It was a statement. "He is. For a long time. For a long time." "Good." Linda flinched at the word. The therapist had warned her about this. Tyler might have anger. Tyler might have things he had been holding inside. The visit was going to include the hard things, not just the soft ones. "Tyler," Linda said, "I want you to know. I want you to know that what happened, what Wade did to me, what he did to you, It was not your fault. None of it. You were a little boy. You were the person who needed to be taken care of. And I did not take care of you. I let a man into our house who hurt you. I am responsible for that. I will be responsible for that for the rest of my life. And I am sorry, Tyler. I am so sorry. Tyler was looking at the ground. He was thinking. Mom, Tyler said, why didn't you wake up that night? Linda took a deep breath. The therapist had prepared her for this question. I was sick, Tyler. I had taken medicine that made me very, very tired. The medicine was making me worse, not better. I should not have been taking it, but I did. And that night, I took too much, and I could not wake up. The medicine was so bad that without help, I would have... She paused. I might have died, Tyler. The doctors at the hospital told me. The medicine was that bad. The men at the bar, Mr. Ray and his friends, they helped save my life by getting help to me in time. Tyler looked at Ray. Ray was standing about 15 feet away. Ray nodded at Tyler. Is that true, Mr. Ray? Ray walked over. He kept his distance from Linda. He looked at Tyler. It's true, Tyler. The police got there in time because we called them. The paramedics took your mum to the hospital. The doctors gave her medicine that reversed the bad medicine. If we had not called when we did, your mum might have died. Tyler looked at his mother. Something shifted in his small face. The processing was happening. The slow work of fitting new information into the framework of what he had believed to be true. You almost died, Tyler said. Yes. And Mr. Ray and the bikers saved you. Yes. Tyler walked the rest of the way to his mother. He looked up at her face. Then he wrapped his arms around her waist. He did not say anything. He just held on. Linda hugged him back, gently at first, then harder, and she was crying, and Tyler was crying, and Rose, watching from the picnic table, was crying, and Sandy was crying, and Ray, who had told himself he was not going to cry today, was crying too. The hug went on for a long time. The therapist watched. The therapist was the only person at the park who was not crying. The therapist was crying inside, as therapists sometimes do, but professionally she had been trained to keep her face neutral. When Tyler finally let go of his mother, he stepped back. He looked at her. You can't come live with us yet, Tyler said. Grandma Rose said, you have to keep working on getting better, and then we'll see. I know, Tyler, that is the plan. I'm going to keep working. And someday, when the doctors and your grandma and you all decide I'm ready, we will see. But I'm not asking for that today. Today I just wanted to see you, and to tell you I am sorry, and to tell you I love you. I love you too, Mom. You have a good grandma. I know. Are you happy in Lewistown? Tyler nodded. I have friends at school. I have a teacher named Mrs. Garcia who is really nice. I have my own room. Grandma Rose makes me waffles every Sunday. Linda smiled. The smile was wet, but it was real. She used to make me waffles every Sunday too, when I was your age. I know, she told me. The visit lasted 2 hours. They sat at a picnic table. They ate sandwiches that Rose had packed. Tyler told his mother about school. Linda told Tyler, in age-appropriate ways, about the recovery program. She did not minimize. She did not exaggerate. She told him the truth, which was that addiction was a disease, and that she was being treated for it, and that she was working hard to get better. But that getting better took a long time, and was not always certain. At the end of the visit, Linda hugged Tyler again.
She told him she would write him letters. She would call him on the phone every Sunday at 4 o'clock. They had agreed on the time. She would visit again in 3 months if Tyler wanted. The decision would be Tyler's. Tyler nodded. He hugged her again. Then he walked back to his grandmother. Sandy and Linda drove back to the city. Linda was quiet for the first hour. Then she started crying again. And this time, the crying was different. It was the crying of release, of grief, of relief, of all the emotions of a person who has done a hard thing and survived it. "I don't deserve him," Linda said. "After everything. You don't deserve him yet, maybe. But he doesn't need you to deserve him. He needs you to keep getting better. That's what he needs. Keep doing what you're doing. The deserving will sort itself out." Linda nodded. She wiped her face. They drove the rest of the way home in silence. Linda continued her recovery. She went to her meetings. She worked her steps. She got a job at a hardware store working the register. She lived at the sober living facility for the full 6 months. She never relapsed. She wrote Tyler a letter every week. She called him every Sunday at 4 o'clock. The calls started at 15 minutes and grew over the course of the next year to 45 minutes. Linda visited Tyler in Lewistown every 3 months. Each visit was supervised at first. Then, after about a year, the visits became less formal. Linda could come for a weekend, stay at a hotel, spend Saturday with Tyler and his grandmother, ride home Sunday afternoon. Tyler started asking when his mother would be coming. He stopped asking in a worried way and started asking in an excited way. By the time Tyler was 10 years old, Linda had been sober for 3 years. She had a small apartment of her own in the Seoul city. She had been promoted at the hardware store to assistant manager. She was saving money. She was rebuilding. The question of Tyler eventually living with his mother again came up at a family meeting in the fall when Tyler was 11. The therapist was there. Rose was there. Sandy was there. Linda was there. Tyler was there. They sat in the living room of Rose's house in Lewistown and they talked about what Tyler wanted. Tyler said he wanted to stay in Lewistown. He wanted to finish elementary school there. He had friends. He had his teachers. He had his grandmother, who had become the steadiest person in his life. But Tyler said he wanted to see his mother more. He wanted to spend summers with her, maybe. He wanted to know that she was okay and that she was getting better. He wanted to be part of her life. Linda agreed, without hesitation. She did not push for full custody. She did not push for any custody change. She accepted that Tyler had built a life in Lewistown and that the best thing for him was to keep that life intact. She would be a presence in his life, increasingly over the years, but she would not disrupt the foundation that had been built. The plan was made. Tyler would stay with Rose during the school year. He would spend the summers with his mother in the city. He would visit his mother for long weekends every month. They would build a relationship the way relationships should be built, slowly, patiently, with attention to what worked. It worked. Over the next several years, Tyler and Linda built a relationship that was, in some ways, stronger than the relationship they had had before everything fell apart. Tyler had not forgotten the bad years. He had not pretended they had not happened. But he had learned, with the help of his therapist and his grandmother and the slow, steady example of his mother's recovery, that people could come back from terrible things. People could rebuild. People could become, with enough time and effort, the people they should have been all along. Linda became a sponsor herself when Tyler was 13.
She began to mentor other women in early recovery. She became active in the recovery community in the city. She spoke sometimes at events, telling her story, telling about the night her son had walked out of the apartment because she had not been able to wake up, telling about the 80 bikers who had taken him in and saved her life. The Black Eagles continued to be part of the family. Ray and Sandy visited Tyler at least 4 times a year. Big Frank and Donnie sent birthday cards. The chapter held an annual dinner. Every October, on the anniversary of the night Tyler had walked up to the curb across from the bar. They invited Rose and Tyler, and later Linda, and the dinner became one of the chapter's traditions. Tyler called the dinner the cake party, because there was always a cake. Carl Patterson, who had been hit by Wade 3 weeks before Tyler had appeared on the curb, made a full recovery over the course of about 2 years. He never rode a motorcycle again. The trauma was too deep, but he stayed in the club. He came to chapter meetings. He served on the board. He was, in a strange way, more involved in the Black Eagles after his accident than he had been before. The accident had not ended his connection to the Brotherhood. It had deepened it. Wade Garrison served his time. He never reached out to Linda. He never asked about Tyler. He was, by all accounts, a difficult inmate. He had multiple disciplinary incidents during his first 10 years, which extended his sentence and made parole even less likely than it had been at the start. He was eventually released when Tyler was 25 years old. He moved to a different state. The Black Eagles received word through a contact that Wade was working at a gas station and living alone. He did not try to contact anyone from his old life. He simply lived out the remainder of his life in obscurity, the way men who have done what he did sometimes do. Sigo con la parte 6, el epílogo final. Tyler grew up. He grew up in Lewistown, in his grandmother's small white house with the green shutters. He grew up eating waffles every Sunday morning. He grew up walking to the elementary school 3 blocks from Rose's house. He grew up with friends, with teachers who knew him by name, with neighbors who waved at him from their porches when he rode his bike down Maple Street. He grew up safe. Rose Mitchell raised her grandson the way she had raised her daughter, with patience and consistency, and the quiet expectation that he would become a good person. She did not push him in any particular direction. She did not make him feel guilty about his origins. She did not pretend that the things that had happened to him before he came to Lewistown had not happened. She simply provided, every day, the steady presence that he had not had in his early childhood, and she let his nature emerge in its own time. Tyler turned out to be a kind boy, a quiet boy mostly, though he had a small group of close friends, a boy who paid attention to other people's feelings and who, by the time he was 12, had developed the particular instinct of children who have been through hard things. The instinct to notice when other children were struggling and to find small ways to help them. He befriended the new kids at school. He stood up for the children who were being picked on. He was, his teachers told Rose, the kind of student who made the class a better place to be. He saw Linda monthly throughout his childhood, long weekends in the city, summer visits, holidays. The relationship between mother and son grew year by year into something stable and real. Linda did not relapse. She kept her sobriety through the 7 years that Tyler lived in Lewistown and through the years after. She became, eventually, the kind of mother she had wanted to be before the pills had taken her. She did not pretend she had been that mother all along. She simply was that mother now, and she let the present version of herself be the version that mattered. Tyler graduated from elementary school, then middle school. He was a good student, not the top of his class, but solid, steady, the kind of student who did his homework and showed up on time and treated his teachers with respect. He played baseball in the spring and basketball in the winter. He was not the best athlete on the team, but he was the kind of teammate who made the bench better. He cheered loudly. He encouraged the younger players. He took practice seriously. When Tyler was 14, Rose started taking him to the annual dinner the Black Eagles held in the fall. The dinner had been Sandy's idea. Originally, a way for the chapter to keep in touch with Tyler over the years, to make sure he knew that they were still there for him. The dinner was held at the Iron Horse Tavern, in the back room where Tyler had slept on the couch on the night the bikers had taken him in. Jerry, the owner, kept that couch in the back room for years specifically because of that night. The couch became part of the chapter's history. At each dinner, Tyler would sit at the head of the table. Ray would sit on his left, Sandy on his right, Big Frank, Donnie, Sammy, and the other senior officers around them. Rose was always there. Eventually, Linda was always there too. The chapter members would file through, shake Tyler's hand, ask him about school, about sports, about what he was reading. They were checking on him. They were making sure, year after year, that the boy on the curb had grown into a healthy young man. When Tyler was 16, he asked to learn to ride a motorcycle. Ray taught him. On Ray's old Sportster, a bike Ray had bought in 1983 and had kept in the back of his garage for decades, for emergencies, for backup, for exactly this kind of moment. Tyler rode it in the empty parking lot of the Iron Horse Tavern on a Saturday afternoon in May, with Ray running alongside him holding the back of the seat. The same way grandfathers had been teaching grandchildren to ride for as long as motorcycles had existed. Tyler got the hang of it quickly. He had good balance. He had patience. He had the kind of natural feel for the bike that some people have, and most people do not. By the end of the afternoon, Ray let go of the seat and Tyler rode the small lap by himself, and Ray stood in the parking lot and watched the boy he had met on a curb at age 7 ride a motorcycle at age 16, and Ray's eyes were wet for the second time that decade. Tyler got his motorcycle license at 17. He bought his first bike at 18, a used Sportster, paid for partly with his savings and partly with a loan from Rose, partly with a small contribution from the Black Eagles Trust Fund that had been set up for him years before. The bike was not the Harley FXS lowrider that Frank Delano was passing down to Maggie in another corner of Pennsylvania, but it was Tyler's, and it was his entry into the riding community that had carried him through his childhood. By the time Tyler was 20, he was a member of the Black Eagles. The vote had been unanimous. The chapter had grown over the years. The older members had begun to die off, but new members had joined, including some younger veterans who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. The chapter had voted on a Friday night in the back room of the Iron Horse to invite Tyler to join. Ray had asked him. Tyler had said yes without hesitation. He received his patches at a ceremony in October. The Black Eagles patch on the back of his vest, a small patch beside it that read, "Member Since." The date on the patch was not the date he had officially joined. The date was October 22nd, the date 13 years earlier when he had walked across the street and sat on a curb in front of the bar. The chapter had voted to use that date unanimously as Tyler's official membership start date. He had been a Black Eagle since he was 7 years old, the chapter had decided. The patches had simply caught up with the truth. Linda was at the ceremony. Rose was there too, 86 years old now, slower than she had been, walking with a cane, but still sharp in the eyes and clear in the mind. She watched her grandson receive his patches and she cried, the way Rose had been crying about important things her entire life, quietly, contained, but real. Sandy was there, Big Frank, Donnie, Sammy, Ray, who was now 77 and who had stepped down as chapter president 3 years earlier, but who was still the spiritual center of the Black Eagles, the man whose name was spoken when chapter members talked about what the chapter stood for. After the ceremony, the chapter rode together, about 40 motorcycles, on a cold October Friday night, riding the loop that Carl Patterson had been riding when he was hit 13 years earlier, riding it in his honor, the way the chapter had been riding it every October since the year of Carl's accident. Tyler rode in the formation for the first time, 20 years old, on his Sportster, with his Black Eagles patches on his vest. A member. Tyler went to college. He had been accepted to Penn State, the same school where Frank Delano's daughter Rachel had studied nursing 30 years earlier. In the small geographic and emotional coincidence that connected these stories without anyone involved ever knowing it. Tyler studied social work. He had decided at some point during high school that he wanted to spend his life helping children who were in the situation he had been in at age 7. He wanted to be the person who showed up for kids who had nowhere else to go. He graduated when he was 23. The graduation ceremony was attended by Rose, 89 years old now, in a wheelchair brought by a home health aide, and Linda, and Sandy, and Ray, who had driven up from the city in his pickup truck because his back would no longer tolerate the long ride on the Harley. The Black Eagles sent a representative, Sammy, who was now in his early 70s, the new chapter president, the man who had stood up from the table at the Iron Horse on that night 13 years earlier, when Ray had said, "Look across the street." Tyler walked across the stage. He received his diploma. He looked into the audience and saw the people who had carried him there. He saw his grandmother and his mother and the bikers who had become his second family. He waved at them. He smiled. He was 23 years old, and he had his whole life ahead of him, and the people who had made that life possible were watching him. After the ceremony, they had a small celebration at a restaurant near the campus. Rose ate slowly, the way old women eat. Linda told a story about Tyler's first day of kindergarten, when he had been so nervous he had thrown up on the school bus. Sandy told a story about the night at the Iron Horse, the night nobody at the table had ever forgotten. Ray told a story about the day he had taught Tyler to ride the Sportster in the parking lot. Sammy told a story about the chapter meeting where they had voted to make Tyler a member, when Big Frank had stood up and said, "He has been a Black Eagle since he was 7 years old, and we all know it, so let's stop pretending and make it official." Tyler listened. He laughed when the others laughed. He did not say much. He never said much at events where people were celebrating him. He had inherited some of his grandmother's quietness, but at the end of the dinner, he stood up. He raised his glass. "I want to say something," Tyler said. "Just one thing." The table went quiet. "When I was 7 years old," Tyler said, "I sat down on a curb across the street from a bar called the Iron Horse Tavern. I sat down because I had nowhere else to go. I was hungry and cold and scared, and I thought I was alone. I thought there was nobody in the world who could help me. I sat on that curb for about 45 minutes, and then a man named Ray Tilden looked up from his beer and saw me through the front window. He looked at Ray. "Ray, you changed my life. You and the 80 Black Eagles who came out of that bar and sat down on the cold sidewalk and listened to me talk for an hour. You gave me a family when I did not have one. You found my grandmother for me. You helped my mother get into recovery. You put a man in prison who would have eventually killed someone. Maybe me, maybe my mom, maybe somebody else. You did all of that because I sat on a curb and you happened to look up." Ray was crying. He did not try to hide it. He was 77 years old, and he had earned the right to cry in public. "I have spent my whole life," Tyler continued, "trying to figure out how to repay what you gave me. I have not figured it out yet. I do not know if I ever will. But I know what I am going to do with my life. I am going to be a social worker. I'm going to spend my career working with children who are in situations like the one I was in. I am going to be the person who looks up and notices the kids who are sitting on curbs. I am going to do for them what you did for me. That is the only way I know how to repay you." The table was silent. Then Sammy raised his glass. "To Tyler," Sammy said, "and to the boy on the curb." "To the boy on the curb," everyone said. They drank. Tyler took a job in Pennsylvania after graduation, a small county social services agency in central Pennsylvania, about an hour from Lewistown. He could see his grandmother every weekend. He could ride to the city to see his mother every other weekend. He worked with children who had been removed from their homes. He worked with children whose mothers were sick. He worked with children whose fathers were in prison. He worked with children who had been forgotten, who had been hurt, who had been told to leave the house and not come back. He was good at the work. He was patient. He was steady. He was the kind of social worker who took the time to sit on the floor with a child and ask questions and wait for answers. He was the kind of social worker who showed up at court hearings even when he did not have to. He was the kind of social worker who remembered the cases on his desk as people, not as files. The children he worked with did not know that their social worker had once sat on a curb himself. Tyler did not tell them. He did not think the story was about him. He thought the story was about them. He thought his job was to help, not to share. So he kept the curb to himself, and he carried it with him, and it informed every interaction he had with every child who walked into his office. Rose Mitchell died when Tyler was 26, a peaceful death, in her sleep, in the small white house with the green shutters. Tyler was there when she died. He had moved back to Lewistown to take care of her in her final months. The funeral was at the same Methodist church where Frank Delano's funeral would later be held. Though, again, no one involved would ever know the connection. The Black Eagles came to the funeral. 40 motorcycles. They escorted Rose's casket from the church to the cemetery. Tyler led the procession. On a Harley-Davidson now, he had upgraded from the Sportster, black and chrome, the same kind of bike Ray had ridden when he had taught Tyler in the parking lot. After Rose's death, Tyler kept the small white house. He paid off the property taxes Rose had owed. He made the repairs the house needed. He moved in. He lived in the house his grandmother had raised him in. He kept her photographs on the walls. The photographs of her late husband, the photographs of Linda when she was young, the photographs of Tyler at every age. He added new photographs over the years of Linda in her recovery, of Sandy and Ray, of the Black Eagles, of the children he was helping at his job. Linda eventually moved to Lewistown too. She bought a small apartment about half a mile from Tyler's house. She wanted to be close. Tyler agreed. They had dinner together every Sunday. They built the relationship that they had both been working toward for 20 years. The Iron Horse Tavern closed in 2034. Jerry Holcomb died of a heart attack at age 78. His daughter, who had inherited the bar, had no interest in running it. She sold the building to a developer. The bar became a coffee shop. The back room, the room where Tyler had slept on the couch on the night the Black Eagles had taken him in, was converted into a private dining area. The couch had been thrown away. The Black Eagles found a new clubhouse, a small bar in a different part of town. The chapter continued. Older members died, newer members joined. The story of Tyler became part of the chapter's history, told to new members at their initiation, kept alive through the annual October dinner, which the chapter continued to hold at the new bar even after the old one closed. Ray Tilden died in 2041 at the age of 85. Sandy Wilcox had died 2 years earlier at age 80. Big Frank, Donnie and Sammy had all died by 2045. The original Black Eagles who had been at the bar on the night Tyler came to the curb were all gone by the time Tyler turned 40. But the chapter continued. The Black Eagles continued. The patches Tyler had received at age 20 continued to be his patches. On his vest, every Friday night when he rode to the new bar for the chapter meeting. And the story of the boy on the curb continued to be told. To new members, to visitors, to the small but steady stream of riders who had heard about the night when 80 bikers came out of a bar and sat down on a sidewalk and listened to a 7-year-old child tell them why he was crying. The story always ended the same way, with the listeners saying, in some form, "What happened to the boy?" And the storyteller answering, "The boy is fine. The boy is more than fine. The boy is one of us. The boy is doing for other children what we did for him. The boy is a Black Eagle. He always has been." Tyler is 45 years old now. He is still a social worker. He is still in Lewistown. He still rides his Harley every Saturday morning. He has been married for 15 years to a woman named Anna, who is also a social worker and who understands, as Tyler understands, that the work they do is the most important work they can do, even when nobody notices and nobody thanks them, and the systems they work within do not reward them. Tyler and Anna have 2 children, a daughter named Rose, after his grandmother, a son named Ray, after the man who looked up from his beer on a Friday night in October and saw a small boy sitting on a curb across the street. Both children know the story. Tyler tells it to them every year on the anniversary of the night he showed up at the Iron Horse Tavern. He tells it the same way every time, without dramatizing, without minimizing, just the facts, the way the men of the Black Eagles always told the story. A boy walked up to a bar. A man looked through a window. 80 bikers came out and sat down on a sidewalk. A child was saved. That is the whole story. The story is small. The story is also enormous. The story is what happens when ordinary people, bikers, veterans, retired iron workers, retired nurses, men with long grey beards and patches on their vests, decide that they are not going to look the other way. The story is what happens when a community of people who have nothing in common except a love of motorcycles and a history of military service and a stubborn refusal to let bad things happen on their watch decide that a child is one of theirs and is going to be taken care of, no matter what. The story is what happens when good men show up. That is the story. The boy is doing fine. The boy has been doing fine for 38 years. And every year, on a cold October night, in a small Pennsylvania town, in a small white house with green shutters that Tyler inherited from his grandmother, two children gather around their father at the kitchen table and listen as he tells them, for the 8th time, for the 10th time, for the 15th time, about the night a father looked up from his beer and noticed a child crying on a curb. The story does not get old. Some stories never do. Terminamos las 6 partes. Aproximadamente 100,000 caracteres. Aproximadamente 75 a 80 minutos. ¿Necesitas descripción, prompts de imágenes o thumbnail?